Hey, welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is time to talk about other things but in sports. And we're going to talk about life and differences of personalities and cultures and all that. I'm going to be talking to, do you want to be spoken as Emily Beautiful Pepland, or how do you want to introduce yourself?
Uh, Emily works just fine.
Emily works just fine. Well, folks, today we're going to talk to this young lady. We're going to talk about kind of just like her personality and her and the culture of woke. But we'll introduce her first as an individual. Uh, where are you from? What is your background of education, or just who you are? Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Emily Andrews, and I'm from Northern Ontario, Canada. So, yes, I'm a filthy Canadian. I am currently medically retired, but I do, in my spare time, write, and I do have a few books out in the ether. And I am a mother to a son, and as much as I love city life, I actually live on a farm for God knows what reason.
Okay.
And yeah,
Okay, so let's talk about your personal reason of, I mean, why are you on disability or why you're not working anymore? We'll start from that baseline.
sure. So in about 2019, I collapsed and I thought it was low blood sugar. I didn't think much of it, but then it just kept happening and it wasn't stopping, and other symptoms were creeping up too, like I was getting my limbs were becoming paralyzed, or I couldn't swallow, and went through a million different tests. And you when you go through all the tests, you kind of get stuck with the label of functional neurological disorder, which is a fancy term of saying you don't have anything wrong with your brain, but all your symptoms are related to problems with your brain.
Okay.
So it wasn't safe for, they said it's not really safe for me to be outside without some kind of escort in case I do fall. And so that's what kind of brought me to being medically retired.
Oh, okay. And and have you ever had any type of health issues in the past, or is this something that came up just you individual or your family members, trace line, anything like in that field?
Very spontaneous. I've had other health issues that required me to have a hysterectomy, but otherwise nothing else, not even remotely like this. So
And then there's times that you can just have, like you said off air, a seizure or an epilepsy moment, and then you're
yeah.
still there, like you kind of spaced out, but you can listen and hear, and then you kind of refocus to the moment of where you're at. Is that how that works?
Yes, and it's very spontaneous. So it looks like a dead faint to someone who's watching. But for me, I'm perfectly conscious. I just have no control over my body. And if usually it only lasts a few seconds, the times where it lasts, the longest ever lasts is almost an hour. And when that happens, I have to have something really jarring happen to me, which is, for me, it's getting my feet tickled. I don't know, there's a couple of videos out there of other people with FND with their different things. One woman, her husband pounded her on the chest, and people in the comments of the video were horrified, like that must be painful, but it's what she needed to come out of it. So everyone has their own thing.
Oh, okay, okay. And then what? It's because you we connected on Facebook, and we connected on just the podcasting on Facebook, or for the podcasters on Facebook, and then you kind of just kind of mentioned that you're a very uh, a personality that's a avatar or more towards the woke moment or the woke movement. And what does that mean in your case? What does that woke movement mean?
I like, I use the word woke because it's what other people use, and I just like to say I'm so woke that I never sleep. And for me, it's not my favorite word. I just like to think that I have compassion for other people, and if the more compassion you have and the more you advocate for social safety nets for people who are different tend to
Mhm.
put you in that woke category. But I do think it just, for me, and I'm having a hard time not being insulted, because for me it becomes just having compassion for your fellow man. But I don't want it to come across to someone who doesn't say they're woke that they're not a compassionate person. So it
Oh,
is a fine line to walk.
okay. And what took you to that spot where you felt compassion for are you compassionate just for people who are like trans, LGBTQ plus, or is it more like you're more compassion towards other people with other disabilities, and then that the word woke kind of just puts everything together, but it's still a different aspect of it.
For all people who are don't fall within the norm, and honestly I would also say there's no more norm anymore.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
but LGBTQ, disabilities, different people of different races, cultures, anything, I think everyone deserves compassion and a second look. At the very least, give them a second look before um, denying them something that they say that they need. So in the case of someone with a disability, you say, well, they could do a little bit of work, or they could do this or that, because someone actually online gave me the example of the people in China who are almost like they're bedridden. They have the chips implanted where they can run the robots in the restaurant, and they say, see, disability disabled people could have work. And I'm like, well, one, that is so over the top, 1984. You can't even compare the two. It's something that's not accessible to everyone, but it's, if you gave me a job that was within my abilities and then told me that I wasn't going to lose certain benefits that would help me round that out, it would be great. But and this is something I actually wanted to talk to you about, to see what it's like in the States, because in Canada, uh, let's say I decide I wanted to volunteer. If
hmm
I volunteer too many hours,
hmm
I lose my benefits. If I I write a, like, let's be positive and say this went viral and I sold 100 books off of it, I would end up in some kind of review process because I made too much money in 1 year.
yeah, yeah,
And so the fact that you always have to keep track of those things, I I if you want to use the word woke, someone who's woke would kind of put into perspective that you can't see everything as just black and white. There's
yeah,
nuance to everything.
yeah. I would tell you this in the okay, the way that we use woke is more towards the transgender identity, um, that type of area where people who are identifying as a woke person, or I mean, people who identify as a trans person, they will identify as more woke, and then people who you and I are disabled, that's more in a different field in the states. But I will say that's true that if you do now, it's not volunteering, it's work that we do per week. Because I don't collect disability, I can gain 40 hours a week and make that as my income. Now I do live in an apartment where it's back to work, where my rent is lower than everyone else's based on um, the zip code that I live in. The zip code is so I'm also comparable to someone who is a doctor, nurse, or in this city we have a couple millionaires than what I make, and then that accumulates how much I would have to pay rent. Now, volunteering, that's totally different. Volunteering is if I go to volunteer at Home Network, a place for people with disability, I can do that as many times a week I want, or as long as they want me there. That's a whole different thing. But for you, I think that word maybe for the Canadians, the word volunteering, you guys still get paid in that form and shape, correct?
No, it is
Oh.
strictly non-paid, but in the the government's mind, if you can volunteer, you can do something to get paid, and we can stop paying you.
Oh,
So
okay.
they, like, every little thing that they can kind of pull out of giving you money, they'll find a way.
Well, yeah. I think one of the things about the states is that there's a lot of fraud in the states about people working or not able to work. For I mean, it happens a lot. But people would say that they can't walk and they're in the wheelchair, and then at home they're just walking around and doing whatever. And then the neighbors see this and they don't say nothing because they don't know it, technically if they really just in pain or something. But if that department showed up to them and say, "Yeah, we saw you driving around in your car, and you're telling us that you're in a wheelchair and you can't do nothing," they could take all those benefits away. And usually, those extreme people will take advantage of that situation. The problem that we really have is people with disability in the states is that kind of three things. If you're a person like me who is disabled, you're going to have to have all your paperwork done, get all the doctors that you talk to, line it up, fill out a piece of paper, fill out that documents, send it to the office, and then they clarify, look at it. And if it said that you're unable to physically work, or you physically can't do things for 40 hours per week, then they'll put you on those benefits. However, if you go over those hours, basically it's like 21 and 24 hours per week, and your boss isn't paying attention, and she says, "Well, we give you six extra hours because Joe Schmo isn't showing up and you showed up." Technically, I could say to her, like, "I can't take those hours. Please take them off because it's going to look bad on the W-2 form, which is our tax way of the government following how much money that we make per year, and then we fulfill it out." So that's the scenario that we're in that department. That's where it falls really kind of short, where you're just like, "Oh, I can't do that." And then a lot of times, people, second thing is that a lot of people, um, they they don't have state IDs, and that's his client kind of the big deal about the states. Homelessness isn't really based on people just not wanting to work or just being ignorant. A lot of times people become homeless, they get robbed from each other. Everything's about social class. So the rich steal from the rich, the poor start steal from each other. So the homeless guy just gets on the street, he's on medication, he loses his ID, he doesn't get if he doesn't get his ID, he doesn't get no benefits. So then that's the difference. I'm not really sure how Canada does with the homelessness, but in our country, we're kind of like, yeah, whatever.
Well, I just want to give if I'm not going to give the finger, but I want to give a finger to all the dinks out there who lie. And there's the I'm going to under I want to say I understand there are people who lie to get on disability out of desperation, and that's what happens when you have the class society, and that's happens out here too. But then I want to give a big fu to all the dinks who do it because they're dinks. Uh,
Mhm.
the homeless problem here is really bad as well. But this was one thing I learned because of actually your last election, because I didn't really understand why it was so hard to get IDs. So the difference is out here, if you're homeless and you need photo ID, you can put the homeless shelter in town as your address,
Mhm.
and then you can get the ID right away. So they take away that barrier. So you might still be homeless because the benefits they give are a joke, but at least you still get something. And and they're like some of the places are even open on weekends to get the ID, so it's really easy. And I didn't realize in the states that's completely different.
Well, you nail it to the spot. So I'm not sure if Canada has a nonprofits or organizations out there, but in the states, you can create a nonprofit organization as long as the end of the fiscal year of that nonprofit, there's no money in the bank accounts. It goes to the resource. So let's say I'm a guy and I say, "Hey, I'm going to open up a nonprofit for breast cancer," and I just hire a bunch of women who are very good looking, and I put it on my platform and say, "Oh, a breast cancer awareness," I only have to give 20% of that to, and I think it's only 20%. The last time I checked, to an organization that fights against breast cancer, and then I keep the rest. And so the homeless shelters, now it could be wrong. It could be 80-20 flip it. So I have to give 80% of that and 20% keep me. I'm not really sure of the numbers because I wasn't prepared about that part of this conversation. So I could be totally wrong. So that typically what happens to nonprofits in America. In, let's say, a homeless shelter in Grand Rapids, they can have it so they have a CEO, uh, everyone that starts running the uh, the homeless shelter, the security, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, the people that make sure the people are in bed, uh, the food and all this comes in and they feed them. They they pay all those people, but then their resources for the homelessness is like this, is like very small. So obviously they don't allow, like you said, that the homeless shelter to be have a place identify as a home. In the States, you have to have three different IDs. You have to have a photo ID, usually a social security card, and a bill. So it could be electric bill, it could be a bill, let's say you didn't pay for 6 months of a medication or whatever. It's a bill. But that's how it really, it's just, it's a bizarre concept of business. And the only way to fix it is that would have to change the law of the nonprofit organizations like that, like homeless shelters. And that thing
And
is, a lot of wealthy people are like put money into that. Like I know the Meyer, which is a grocery store in the States, in especially in the Midwest, they run Mel Trotter, and then the DeVosses tell how Mel Trotter should be run, how it should be ran. So that's the
wow.
thing. So a lot of wealthy people put money into Goodwill is another organization where you pay cheap bucks for a shirt that you could have bought at a department store or online. So instead of paying 20 bucks, you pay 15, but that money isn't really distributed to the employees that well. They get paid
Yeah.
13 bucks an hour or 10 bucks an hour, 8 bucks an hour, but that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, we have a similar organization here called Value Village, and it
Mhm.
used to be one of the greatest places to shop. And now there's so many news reports out there that are showing, like, look, the shirt here costs this, and then if you go to Walmart, it's actually cheaper. So
Mhm.
there, all these systemic problems. I truly believe if we could get rid of greed, the world would be such a better place because greed is the thing that's going to take us down. It truly is. And as far as starting a nonprofit in Canada, I know about this because I was part of the Sudbury Writers Guild.
Mhm.
And we had toyed with the idea at one point of getting nonprofit status because you get certain benefits and nothing major though because we were a small organization, but the paperwork and the signatures and the verification, it just wasn't worth it.
Mhm.
So just to be a local group that does our own thing and doesn't bother with anyone else was so much easier. And I think it should be hard. But see, there's always that line though. There's a line between it being so difficult that it becomes preventative from people helping others, but also keeping out the people who are meant to do it harm to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in the long run, if you look at things like that, um, any federal government, a lot of people don't realize that federal government is really there to protect the people from other countries invading, and then the states are supposed to help their people that live in the states or where I mean you're don't have states, you have regions. But that's the difference. And a lot of times the federal government can't keep their eyes on everything, and there's no clear answer on how to fix the problem that we have of homelessness or people who are disabled or identification of the person's identity. There's just really not a good way of it. But going back to just your ideology, was there a particular time that you saw something about someone who was a trans or someone who was disabled, or was this after that you became disabled? You're like, oh, now I know how it feels to be kind of put in the corner.
I would like to think I was always like this, but I wasn't. It did take some growing up. I
Mhm.
think it happened around a point where someone said something so innocuous because I said, "I just don't get trans people." And they said, "Well, what's to get? It's not, is it affecting you in any way?" And it's like, it really isn't. It's really not bothering me in any way. So why do I have a problem with it? And so I had to really look at where did that problem with it come from? And it came from the ideas that I was given as a kid. Like, we'd go out and my grandmother owned a tourist resort, and my cousin would be taken hunting and fishing, and I'd be taken too. But at my age role is to sit there and watch them hunt and fish.
Yeah.
No one let me in on it. So I I always had these weird ideas of what I was supposed to do. And
Mhm.
once I realized I didn't have to do that stuff, it's like, why would I want other people to be forced into a role that they don't feel comfortable in,
Mhm.
whether that is a societal role or a physical role?
Mhm.
And to be perfectly transparent, my son is trans, and I see some of the problems he has, and he takes it in stride, which is great, but he doesn't get he gets the hate more than I do. Like, he'll just like, "Ah, I can handle it. It's not a big deal." Whereas I'm so mama bear about it that now I'm blinded by something else. I'm
Mhm.
blinded by the idea that I want to protect my child.
Mhm. Okay, okay. So how old is your son?
He's going to be 15 this month.
Okay, and, let's go a little backwards a little bit. Now, you and I are both brought up in the era where, boys are boys and girls are girls, and in your field, I think that we've had girls hunt and fish, probably more in Texas and in the southern states, because a lot of times girls can be tomboys and still be heterosexual. And I think that's something that's very normal in the States. And I think that one thing that's different about trans is it's kind of like, for me, I just can't click the idea of you or that person thinking, "Oh, I'm trapped in a woman's body, but I'm a man." Well, how's it? Is that? I don't know how that works, but
No, no,
so
that's perfect.
so so to me, I can see that people are feminine. Like, let's say, like we can say certain artists out there are more feminine than masculine. I mean, you can look at George Michael. He's more feminine, gay, but we're in the States, we were okay with that. Elton John, very flamboyant, gay, but
Dwight
he was
Yoakam.
but yeah, and carry on. And we don't have, I mean, we just like maybe the we call the maybe the pretty boys like Elvis and Brad Pitt, pretty boys that are clearly better looking than all of us and have more of a feminine future, but they're still straight. So that doesn't mean so when we see someone say, "Well, I'm a trans and I'm going to change my identity completely to align up for what I feel," it sounds a bit like a dressed up moment, like they're trying too hard or they're trying to be something. And I always feel like because I never had a good conversation with someone, I feel like they always are like they don't belong in the same spectrum of boys be boys and we're going to hunt and fish and we're going to play football or baseball or soccer and all that. But that just means that you don't have that personality. So the lapping of you going to the other side or becoming a trans doesn't line up for most people in America. And top of that, I think for some reason the school systems in here, they were really hesitant to teach about biology between boys and girls. And this is like maybe in the 2000s, because I remember in high school they used to tell us in we used to have a class in school what the ovaries do, what the sperm and all that other stuff does, and it was part of the classroom. And then they took they took a gym away, and then they started taking things away, and then out of nowhere, the the trans movement showed up, and it just felt like everyone was who were trans was pushing it to everyone that wasn't trans or didn't understand it or didn't want to hear about it. It was. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Well, it's actually a little funny because you and I have the same viewpoint but a different conclusion,
Hmm.
because I see when they started taking away educational moments that were really helpful, we went in the way that we became more hateful to people that we didn't understand.
Hmm.
But when I went to Catholic school, and my science teacher actually got in trouble for this. I remember, because she was teaching us about how the prevalence of XXY and XXX chromosomes and all these were actually pretty prevalent in society, and
Hmm.
that we should do more research. And sometimes I wonder if we had not suppressed everything and done more research, we would have found by now more scientific explanations that would not force the people who are uncomfortable or who need that. Like, I totally get the idea that you don't want to believe someone who says just trust me, bro. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I have, and I've seen very, very preliminary studies where they were talking about how a trans woman's brain will be more organized like a cis woman's brain. So, and it would be so cool if they could do more research on that,
Hmm.
because then it would give that scientific explanation that would give more legitimacy. And even if they didn't find a scientific explanation and we knew it was a completely societal thing, it would there would be a reason to understand more, and it would be a reason to have more conversations. But right now we don't know how to have the conversation because it is so pitted to us versus them.
Yeah.
Like, in reality, you and I shouldn't be having this civil discussion. We should be at each other's throats and, screaming to high heaven.
Yeah. I think that that screaming to high heaven. I think that's just something that people just assume would happen because it's happened in the past. And I would say this: if I had a kid in school and my teacher brought a trans person to class, I might say something like, "You're not bringing in two heterosexuals teaching kids uh, sex. Then what's the point of bringing a trans person or a gay person in the school system?" Not to say they don't belong there. I mean, everyone belongs everywhere. But I'm just saying there comes time to a point of that's what those parents were really kind of saying. Like it's a weird thing. Like I always say this to people, especially to younger people. I said your parents might have should have told you about the birds and bees, but they are not the ones that should show you how to have sex. So it's like that concept, and that's what if you bring in someone to school and try to teach them what sex is or what dressing up as a different person, that's not. It's just not in the school. It should not be in the school. No, it should be force onto a person who's adolescent, because most people's brains don't fully develop until the age of 22, 25. Most women obviously develop a lot faster than men, but for reasons of the reproductive systems and all that. But in that case, I'm like, that's where I sympathize with people who are like totally rejected of that, because it takes small key. Like I still would not want, eh, even even if I had kids, I still wouldn't think that my I think my school system, the teacher should talk about biology and everything else. Whether, but if I was, but if they start talking about contraceptives and condoms and all this stuff, I'm like, now you try and put something in my kid's head, and then now he's gonna look at like at every girl, say, "Do you like me? Do you like me?" Oh, like sometimes you just gotta let that thing happen when it happens. It's it's a weird thing
Well,
to say out loud, and a lot of people get really upset with me by saying that. And I do have sense of dark humor, and it's like I'll make fun of something, and people really will just like, oh, and it's like, you were my audience 2 minutes ago. Now you just turned on me like that. So
well, if you'll allow me just to say, I think for a younger audience, let's say even to grade 10, the having people come in, having a gay person, a trans person, non-binary, a heterosexual person come in, and they don't have to talk about the sex aspect, but they can talk about their social relationships, where how they feel when they walk around, like how why does this trans person think they're trans, what, and when they present themselves, why do they feel they have to present themselves this way? Those things I think are age appropriate. It doesn't always have to be come down to the genitals. I think there's ways to explain the world to kids that are age appropriate, and we can move up from there. And
mhm.
we just we're so, but like I said, we're so divided on the issue right now that it's hard to have a conversation where we can meet in the middle, but there's always a way to meet in the middle. I really truly believe that.
Yeah, yeah. I just think that when I was younger, we just kind of found out on our own. And it was just like, yeah, we just kind of found out. It wasn't really like my parents. No, they did probably talk to all my other siblings about the birds and the bees, but it's like it wasn't so deep. It was never really detailed. But we kind of like, yeah, I would admit that I probably was way too young when I figured out what boys and girls do when they get older. But because it was kind of like on my own thing with my friends who had older brothers who had certain magazines and all this stuff. Back in the day, we had magazines of that type of material, which probably wasn't really helpful, but we kind of just, for boys, it's just different. We just kind of find it. And then we all know hypothetically in our brain where we find where we're from in our food chain. So we all kind of know if we're the better looking ones or the athletic ones or the ones that the girls like. And then we know the guys like me who are more below and whatever. But that's something that we're okay with. And I think sometimes people in today's era, not just the schools, but the parents, not just the parents, but everyone else around, they make it such a big deal for that teenager to be growing up in that era. Like, okay, okay, you gotta like this girl, you gotta like that guy, you have to be, or you have to be extremely open minded because we don't want you to be homophobic or transphobic and all that. And that's what I think that's the difference now than 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 then. We always kind of figured out who the kid in high school was gay, so we wouldn't make fun of him. We probably like, what's wrong with that guy? Or, you know, and back in the day we used terms that were not appropriate, but now we don't because we know it's a hurtful thing. But we kind of just figured, okay, that guy's clearly not one of us, but y- where I grew up, it was like very quiet about it, but we wouldn't beat up somebody about it. Now, I can't say that about the city's schools or whatever. I think they were much more, you know, at your face about it if you were clearly the one that's a different. I know as a person with a disability, with a physical disability, I was mocked a lot at a very young age. And then all the kids kind of grew out of it by the time I was in high school. I still would get mocked in a certain way, but it wouldn't be obvious in your face. Like it was different. So, I mean, but that is kind of what shaped me to be I guess, a better person, but probably a very shy person. And then I'm not as open to other people or to other women. Maybe that's the downfall of it. So I can't. I'll let you know when I figure it out. So,
That's fair.
so I mean, that's
I
the. I mean, for you in the Catholic school, I'm just surprised that your teacher was able to go as far as talk about the X's and Y's and what it does and all that. And I went to a private school, so Christian private school, so they taught us the X, Y's, and Z's, but then everyone knew what the end result was of the X, Y, and Z. I mean, they didn't have to tell us what it is
I
or
think
how
maybe
people do it.
they were too black and white with what the end result is. The end result can be an A, B, and C with the X, Y, and Z, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, and I really think that. Yeah, I just think that a lot of times if you look at life, it's just a bizarre thing that we are individuals and there's 7 billion or probably 8 billion people on the planet, and there's so many of us that we can't. And I just think that people need to belong to something. And sometimes I think that's really what it is. Like I'm a sports guy, so I go to sports bars, hang out with other guys that I'm not really friends with, but I'm acquaintance with because I go there a lot, and then we'll watch the Detroit Pistons, the Red Wings, the Lions, Detroit Lions, and then we leave and we don't talk to them for the next week. I think the younger crowd, I'm not really sure how many friends your son has, but there it comes to a point where people are more on their phone or more on their tablet, and then they are on the internet and they believe everything they say or hear. I was lucky. I don't know how old you are, but I was lucky enough to be in that borderline where we were very young before the computers, and then we were in our late 20s when the computers and the iPhones took over. So we could uh, see what's real and what's not, or what's doesn't really matter, and what does matter. And I think that's what the issue is. A lot of the youth right now, they they're on their phones all day long, and they see something. Some guy said something bad about me, and about someone who's trans, and then they all go to Reddit, and they're like, "Oh, this guy said something bad about Andre, who is disabled. Let's go after him." I never say go after him. I'm just like, that guy has every right to say what he wants to say. I'm just gonna let it go. Where the younger, like, boom, let's go after everybody.
Well, I'm 43, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
um, I could be wrong about this, and I think we're going to see. I'm just seeing this maybe with my son's group of friends, the COVID kids. So the ones who are older, addicted to their phones. The ones who are a little bit younger got so sick of it because they were for like 2 years. That's all they kind of had access to, especially with school, that they
Hmm.
associate being online with being in school.
Oh yeah.
That it turned them off a little bit.
Oh.
So I don't know if this is just my kids' group of friends or if like, I would love to know if, if anyone responds to you if they see something similar with their kids. But I think it's something interesting to note. I think they started associating it with something bad for their formative years that they're not as attached to it. And especially when they're more skeptical of AI than I am, and I thought I was good at spotting AI. I'm not compared to a 15-year-old.
No, no, you're right. AI has gone crazy, and it's probably the greatest thing I ever heard right now is that knowing that your friends, your your kid's friends, and your son, they're totally turned off to the internet because well, in some ways it's bad to be non-sociable to learn things on the computer because everything's going technology. But in reality, it's great to see them out and about, going out, maybe, going outside to the city someday or coming back to the farm life and experience life. And that's something that most people my age, we kind of miss. We miss just not turning on the computer, the phone, the tablets. I mean, how much binge watching can we do and not socialize with another human being? You know what I mean? And for
Is
you, because you can't get out of the house without someone supervising with you or supervision you, that's got to be three times worse than just, I don't know, dealing with politics with people who doesn't like your kid or,
for about 3 years, I didn't go anywhere without my husband. And then I met one person who saw me. She was part of the Writers Guild, saw me have a seizure, and actually did not have an adverse reaction. She didn't panic. And I think it's because she's one of those people. She works in this prison system, so I don't think anything shocks her. And
yeah,
so the first time I went out without my husband was with her, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. And so I'd say in the last 6 to 8 months, I've been evolving. So I still have to have someone there, but I'm not as picky as to who that person is anymore. I don't have to be. I like now. I know I can handle certain things. I've and I just I don't. I'm not shy about it anymore either. I tell everybody this is what's going to happen. Deal with it because I can't change it. It's not something I can turn off and on.
so you were embarrassed by your epilepsy moments. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes. The worst one
What?
was in a Walmart parking lot, and my kid was like 5 or 6 at the time. And did you know the dirtiest place outside of a Walmart bathroom is a Walmart parking lot?
Yeah, yeah.
And I fell right down, and the people coming up and trying to get my kid, who's like freaking out because this was like his only second or third time seeing me do this. And then
Mm.
the amount of people coming around me, and I couldn't respond. And it's like that was the last time I'm ever doing this again, and I never tried to go out and alone again, or not
Yeah,
even alone because I wasn't allowed to. I'm not allowed to drive, but like I just go ahead of my husband even a couple of feet. It's like no, now I got to keep my safety blanket with me.
yeah. See that? Okay, that makes sense. And now you're more comfortable telling everyone about it, probably because well, at least because you're in the community of where people know you, and if they don't know you, they're like, oh yeah, that's the lady that has epilepsy every once in a billion moon. We just won't have to panic about it and push panic buttons around the world, and we'll just help her out. And then when she's done having it, she can just go right on her way home. Kind of like
Yep,
that. Yeah, see,
exactly.
but that's what community's there for, right? I mean, that's what a small community on the farm system is, you know. And a lot of reasons why I live downtown is because there's more people down there. I think when I used to live in the suburbs, there was only one place to go to, one bar, same people, all married, didn't like each other, and then but they would just go there and drink, and then became very obnoxiously boring. Now I live downtown; it's more people. Even if I don't ever talk to that person ever again, it's like, oh, that's one person. or it's very different to be disabled. And you're very lucky that you have a spouse. I think, for long story short, I think for men who are disabled, it's a whole different circle. I think it's like when men date women who are disabled, it's very honorable. For women to date a man who's disabled, it's if they weren't married before he became disabled, it becomes very strange for everyone else, even them, to be dating someone who's disabled. So you're
Isn't
very
that
lucky that you.
really no, I 100% agree. And it's like they see, oh, isn't he so nice helping you? And he's like, he's so good that he stuck around. And it's like, well, he would have been kind of an ass if he left. But if it would have happened to him, it would have been like, oh, look how strong he is. He doesn't need anyone to help him, even though he's disabled. And he's expected to, like, I don't know, he's expected to be Superman. If
Mhm.
he hurt
Yeah,
his
I just
shoulder and people still ask him to move stuff, like, so I can only imagine if he was taken down by like FND, how he would have been treated. It's ridiculous. I completely agree.
yeah, I just yeah, it's a weird setup. Is there anything that you would say to the rest of the world of what you think and believe that would make a better place besides free healthcare? Everyone says that.
Yes, because yeah, my MRIs and CT scans were all free that I went for. So um,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to where we started. Please just have more compassion for each other. If you don't agree, we cannot agree. We can have conversations, but don't no more hate. Just compassion, and everything else will come into place after that. And stop being
And
greedy. You got enough stuff.
yeah, stop getting. I think she wants to talk about finances next, folks. But look, look, I think compassion is a good word to use to elaborate that you see something, not know, understand, uh, let it sink into your head and see how it doesn't matter to you and how it could matter to you and what you could be or you cannot be if that was you in the other shoe. Right? Is it pretty much? Look,
At the
folks, it
very
was
least.
yeah, at very least. Put the other shoe, put the other guy's walk in that other person's shoe for a mile, and then you'll get the bigger picture in a heartbeat. Kind of like that. Sounds. I
Exactly.
think that's just American thing to say. To put the other shoe on, put the shoe on the other person and your own shoe and walk a mile. See, your shoes sizes don't fit, but you know what? You didn't fall, right?
Well, I'm going to make them say it in Canada too now.
Yeah, new phrase for Canada. I don't know. I'm surprised that you didn't say A. That's the only thing I'm surprised that you didn't do because that's what Americans think that every Canadian says, and that's
I didn't
probably
say
not
a
true.
boot either.
What's that?
I didn't say a boot either.
No, see, that's something like, hey, all Canadians don't say all the same. Like, I'm surprised I have this red sweatshirt on because I was wearing my Red Wings hat. I didn't want my audience to get confused me talking to someone from Canada about Red Wings. And like, we're talking about hockey now again? Yes. Huh? So, look, folks, it was great to be here. It was great to have Emily on this show. I would like to thank Emily, everything about coming on the show, talking about her life, his life, her epilepsy moments, what it's taught her. Appreciate it. Follow me on Spotify. You can find me on YouTube, Patreon. Cheers. Thanks, Emily. Anything else to
Thank
say?
you.
You're
Mwah.
welcome. Ciao. Now I'm English.